Welcome to the 9 to 5 Dropout Show, where you learn from leading experts how to quit your job and successfully start your own business. With your host, author, owner of Mind, Body and Spirit Entrepreneur, and creator of the 9 to 5 Dropout Academy, Rachel Thompson.
Welcome to the 9 to 5 Dropout Show, your weekly inspiration to quit the 9 to 5 grind, get off of the hamster wheel, and finally pursue your passion. Now, today's guest is probably the most adventurous guest that we will ever have on the show, and I'm very excited to talk to her. Now, she is author Lucinda Bakken White, and she actually began her professional career with an MBA at a coveted position at IBM. So throughout the years, Lucinda's deep connection with nature, as well as her insatiable quest for learning, has led her to study and work with internationally acclaimed philosophers, as well as prominent figures across a broad spectrum of disciplines. So now, as an inner wildness guide, she is an expert in the process of self-discovery and personal transformation. And she is the author of Confessions of a Bone Woman, Realizing Authentic Wildness in a Civilized World. Through private coaching and public speaking and her writings, she teaches how to be authentically wild in this civilized world. Well, welcome, Lucinda. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and have a conversation with you.
Me too. So just to begin the show, I would love to hear a little bit more of your story. I mean, how did you go from IBM to what you're doing now?
Well, as a young person, I grew up in the 80s, which was the yuppie era, and the values in my family and the surrounding culture were to go on diets, be thin, be beautiful, get an education degree, the higher the better, and make a lot of money have a good job, make a lot of money, and a nice car. So I set myself out on that trajectory, and it wasn't so easy. It was very, it's hard work, but I believed it. I bought it hook, line, and sinker that would make me happy. And that's what kept me going. And when I was 27 and I was working for IBM, driving a Porsche, living in a condominium near the beach, I noticed that the thoughts in my head and the feelings in my body didn't match how I looked on the outside and the words that were coming out of my mouth. So that disconnect spiraled me into a crisis because I didn't have anyone to talk about it with. Nobody understood. And I actually, it was the beginning of being an avid seeker of what is the meaning of life and what is happiness. Because I, at age 27, had fulfilled the first level of accomplishing the American dream, and I wasn't happy. And there were other points in my life where I kept continuing, okay, maybe more, I'll accomplish more, and I had another crisis. So I was like peeling back the layers of the onions.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so similar to my story, because at 27, I had a similar crisis. I got my master's, had the 9 to 5 job, bought a house, and I was like, wait, all of this was supposed to make me happy and none of it did. So what's next? So that's very interesting that we were the same age when we had that epiphany. So I'm just so curious. So you have all of this and then you start to question, what is life all about? This isn't making me happy. After you came to that realization, what did you do next?
So the first thing I did was quit my job at IBM. And back then, IBM was at a peak and it was a very coveted place to work and nobody quit. You were there for life. So it was very shocking. And I moved home with my parents and spiraled into a deep depression with thoughts of suicide. And I was at a crossroads and I knew it. And after months on the couch, I ended up in going to a psychologist and slowly pulled myself out and began to individuate and to recognize that I had certain beliefs that I had adopted from family, culture, media, and that I could also be my own authority. And so that was a whole new concept for me the first time in my life. By now I'm 28. What? I don't have to believe everything everybody says. So I started that process of individuating. I pulled away from my family a little bit. It's not that they were bad. It's just that I didn't have anyone to talk to, and nobody understood what I was going through. When I tried to talk to friends or family, they would say, "Are you kidding me? I don't feel sorry for you. You have this, 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 and this. Stop feeling sorry for yourself." And that made me feel really crazy. So going to psychology was the first step in understanding that I could individuate, and I could look at all the beliefs and values that I had accumulated and question the ones that no longer served me, take the best of the past, and then move forward with some new ideas. And that kind of got, it took a while, but it got me going, and I got a job. I went right back to high tech because that's all I knew. Mm-hmm. And I needed money to get out of the house so that I could rent an apartment and then start to have my own thoughts without being influenced by other people. And I got to another platform, a place of happiness. I had evolved a little bit. And then I got married and had children. And then I went right back to what I knew best of, manifesting. And I married the CEO of a company, and we had a huge social life. And I became a socialite and couture and bigger houses and bigger cars, because we keep thinking that it's going to be more. That'll make me happy. Mm-hmm. And I hit the wall again and had another crisis. And again, I was tracking myself the entire time, aware of what I was doing. And what I realized is women can do it all. We're taught to do it all. We're super women. Mm-hmm. And we put on these personas and masks and fronts in order to fit in. And there's an entire interior, inner world, an authentic self that gets denied because it's invisible and it's not valued. And we become exhausted by doing more and more and more. We're superior mothers and wives and sisters and daughters and business people and artists, and we just do it all. Mm-hmm. So what tends to happen is that breakthroughs can come in the form of what first looks like a disaster. Could be a divorce, a health crisis, a challenging child, addiction, depression, or any number of things. And mine came in the form of a bright red cheek. It was from nose to ear, eye to chin. It was the face I showed to the world. I couldn't hide it anymore. I no longer could be beautiful and fit in, and it really caused me to go inward and express my inner self, which I had done a good job of masking by all the false fronts and personas. I wanted to fit in.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's an incredible story. And I think a lot of listeners will really benefit from hearing that, because you did have it all in society standards. And that wasn't enough because it's superficial. Like you said, you're able to put on the front, but it doesn't matter the car you drive or how pretty you are or whatever, if the inside, if you're not happy or you're not fulfilled. So you had this red cheek, and then what happened from there? How was that a pivotal moment in your life?
Yes, so I had been tracking myself all along, and I had, life, time, and lessons come in cycles and circles, and that's why I talk about peeling back the layer of my onion. So I had evolved enough to meet a wonderful man and get married, and I was happy for a while, but then you slip back into old habits and ways of being. And even though I had a connection to my inner self and I was growing and evolving, I didn't feel safe enough to really express it to the world. So yes, there was a connection. I was getting to know who I was, on the inside in my 30s, but wasn't always safe for me to be who I was because I might be judged, or a part of me might be, considered shameful. So I wasn't 100% honest, and I was wearing these masks to fit into the different groups. And it became exhausting. I was by the time my children were teenagers, I was just completely depleted and exhausted. And there was, again, another underlying depression. But now because I had children, I couldn't really stop and have the breakdown that I did when I was 27 because I had to just hold it together for the family. And that creates a tremendous amount of pressure, especially the older you get. All these parts of yourself that you're suppressing, they're like beach balls under the water. It's a lot of energy to hide parts of yourself. And that creates exhaustion because you're always doing and you're on the hamster wheel and you're pleasing other people. And I think I was angry. There was a part of me deep down inside that was angry that I would be loved for being beautiful, for being accomplished, because I had a big house, because I was a CEO wife. That made me angry. I thought, you like me because of that? And yes, I'm doing it. And yes, I'm fitting in, but that is not, I felt a disconnect. It was shallow. I knew there was more to me than meets the eye. I wanted people to see me and love me for who I was on the inside. But in order to do that, I had to love that person first. So this anger that I was feeling and this awareness that I had, I wasn't brave enough yet to debut as who I was. And I still was a little bit confused about who that was anyway, even though I know there was someone in there, an authentic part of me that wanted to be expressed. Because we all have an inner world and a tangible outer world, and they're both good. What I learned is about bringing them both into balance. So this, what I think is, I think in symbols, is that this anger, actually, I couldn't contain it inside me anymore, and it's expressed itself in my right cheek because it was like a burning red, raw skin that eventually was oozing, and then it turned into staph infection. And so, whereas I might have had another problem, something embarrassing happened to me, or I had a characteristic that was shameful, or a trauma that happened when I was young and I would suppress it, or a hobby that was embarrassing, or a desire that was embarrassing. You can hide all those things and go out in public and put on a dress and makeup and just fake it. Mm-hmm. But when you have a big bright red cheek, there's no makeup in the world that can cover that up. So it was symbolically about this face I present to the world, the anger expressing itself, and then I had no choice but to just be who I was, no matter how embarrassing it was. I went to every holistic healer and doctor you can imagine. I even pulled the head of dermatology from UCSF out of retirement. I tried every topical and oral medication you can imagine. Each one gave me a stronger reaction than the other. I went to every holistic healer. I tried diet. I had skin patch testing. Nothing worked. It was a great mystery. And I finally just had to say, okay, this is it. I can't hide at home. I have a husband and children to take care of. I have to be out in the world. I just have to be who I am and cold turkey do nothing but water. And what happened was I connected with a passion. At that same time when I just let go, and this is who I am, mm-hmm. I connected with a passion and was able to redirect my thoughts and feelings, emotion towards something that I loved to do. And I slowly started to heal from the inside out to the point where my cheek is 100% normal today.
Wow. That's a powerful story. And I think it really sheds light on something that a lot of people don't know about or a lot of people don't talk about. And that is when we have things we don't deal with in the inside, they find a way to manifest on the outside. I know that I had a health scare as well. And that's whenever I first discovered Louise Hay, because I had listened to her audiobook, How to Heal Your Life, and it completely changed mine. And it's like whenever, and I don't know if you feel the same, but I'm guessing you might. I was so grateful for that health scare, even though it was terrible going through it, because it's like I had to go through that to get to the next level because I wasn't going to be able to do it on my own where I was. Do you feel like that with your cheek?
Yes, Rachel, that is so profound because that is it exactly. unless we're proactive and we're willing to make change, which we're not taught to do by family, society, culture, or we just don't even know how to do that, let alone do it.
Mhm.
So typically a crisis will come and we think it's the end of the world, or there's something wrong with us, or we've done something wrong, or we're less than perfect and we're embarrassed and ashamed. And actually, it's a gift. It's a gift, and because you wouldn't have gone inward and done the work without it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So I know you talked about symbols just now, and I know that your book is, you talk a lot about the importance of symbols, things like animals coming to you, or even like the cycles of the moon. So can you talk a little bit more about these symbols that people might experience and what we can learn from them?
Yes. So I keep talking about this inner nature that we have. You could call it your soul. It's your spiritual self. It's an invisible essence. And it's unique to each one of us, this interior world that we have, this interior nature. So it's really important to connect with your inner nature and your outer nature, your tangible exterior self and all your tangible accomplishments, and who you are on the inside, the invisible. Let's just call it the soul. The language of the soul is symbols. The soul speaks in the language of symbols. That's why when we go to sleep at night, we have these dreams and they don't seem to make sense. It's symbolic pictures that are speaking to our soul, and we're having a conversation with ourself in the dream time. The same thing can happen during the day when an animal crosses your path, or there's a synchronistic event, like you are dreaming of doing art, but you don't have the time, and you're on an airplane and you sit next to a woman who teaches art and she lives down the street from you. I mean, things like that happen all the time if we're paying attention. And they're like little lighted footsteps that guide us to our authentic self. Because what happens is we are a culture and a society for a long time that is out of balance. I believe all is good until we're out of balance. So we have overexerted our tangible human essence. And we just need to go inward to balance it out with our inner essence and our soul. We can do that by spending time alone, by reading the clues and signs, by being open to it, by noticing the synchronicities and connecting with something we love to do. And a clue is to think back to who you were when a child, because the soul, the authentic self inside of you, is childlike, spontaneous, curious, playful, just like a child. And when you do that, there's this joy that radiates from the inside out. What happened to me was I started finding animal bones. And for some reason, I was absolutely mesmerized when I was on a hike and I would find an animal bone. I thought they were so beautiful and I was really curious. Wow, what kind of bone is this? What animal does it belong to? And how did this animal die? It was before the internet. So I started going to metaphysical bookstores and buying books on symbolism and animals. And I realized that our ancestors used to use animals as their guides. The wolves taught our ancestors how to hunt and how to survive. And each person had an animal totem that represented their authentic character and nature. And I became completely immersed and fascinated that. And then everywhere I went, I was finding bones. So I just kept following those clues and having fun with it. Now, in my arena, I didn't know anyone else doing that. So I thought it was kind of weird and macabre. So this is one of those examples of how you're hiding a part of yourself. I would go to these high society events and I wouldn't talk about it. And if I tried to hint like, oh, I found a deer carcass, people would look weird.
Yeah.
So I didn't have an opening to talk about it, and I kept it in secret like I was really weird and I was doing something weird, but I was compelled to do it. I couldn't help myself. So I just kept collecting these bones. And then finally, one day I looked and there were so many bones in my living room that I said, oh my gosh, I need to put these somewhere. And I started making art out of the bones. And then we had a barn and I started displaying the bones in the barn. And do you know, 15 years later, I looked up and this barn was extraordinary, like a cathedral. The energy was so palpable. And what I realized is this speaks to the idea of connecting with your passion. Doing something that may go against the grain or the norm, something that you just love to do, and you're not thinking, what are other people going to think of me? You're just doing it. You're not thinking, am I going to make money? You're just doing it. And in this process of doing it, 100% of your energy is into it. Energy follows thought. Then that energy, because you love what you're doing, is enlivening. It's that all we need is love feeling. You feel love, and so you're immersed in love. And the more you do it, you start healing from this love energy that you're expressing. And you're not thinking about, oh, I'm late to the doctor. Oh, I had a fight with my girlfriend. All your energy is present. So that 15 years into it, I realized the barn was my heart. This is where I felt love with the bones, with the animals. And it was completely authentic to me. And it healed me and my cheek. And then it was going to be a matter of, how do I share this with the world? Because so far I'd done it in secrecy and privacy. And a lot of us have this double life. Mm-hmm. We have a passion or interest that we're kind of like, oh, you're a painter. You can't make any money doing that. Why are you painting? Well, that's a waste of time. We all have something. It's a matter of now bringing it into balance. If you can connect with it, once you do, then bring it into balance and be both. Be your human nature. Take all your human experiences and your business experience, because it will serve you, and then add it together with this passion and see what you can create.
I think that a lot of listeners really need to hear that story. A couple things stood out to me. First, it just kind of happened for you. You started collecting one bone and then two bones, and then you didn't really question it. You might not have been comfortable telling other people about it, but you didn't question yourself. You just went with it. So I think a lot of people, they want a sign from the universe. They want it to be huge. They want the sign to tell them exactly what they should do to live the life they want. But it doesn't happen like that, at least not most of the time. It happens with these little synchronicities, like you said, and you just have to learn to trust it. And the second piece that I love that you touched on was how so many of us live that double life. But, to live a truly purposeful life, we have to be authentic with ourselves. So I know personally, again, that's something that I have struggled with in the past, because I'm super into metaphysical things. I'm trained in Reiki and all this kind of stuff. And then I hang out with some of my oldest friends, and I can talk about that, but they sometimes look at me like I'm crazy. and so that can be hard to balance. So for somebody who is listening to this right now and they know that they're not being their authentic self, what piece of advice would you give them just to take that first step to really coming into their authenticity?
Yes, you really, I think I have two answers. One is, maybe you're not being your authentic self, but you don't yet know what your passion is. Mm-hmm. Or maybe you do know what your passion is, but you're afraid to express it or to fully dive into it. So let's just say you have connected with it and you don't know where to go with it. It's like you just do it. It's like Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss, because in that bliss, it's that love energy that you're focusing on yourself. And this is how you're going to know when you connect with it. When you are overexerting your human nature, the tangible things and the accomplishments, and putting on your personas to fit in, you're exhausted, you're tired, you're completely depleted, or you're depressed, or you're suffering from sort of, an illness or a problem or a crisis. When you are connected to your passion and doing what you love, when you're connected to your authentic self, it's playful, it's spontaneous, it's intuitive, it's childlike, and you are energized. You are energized. So it's worth it, because you want to connect with that energy to be energized so that you're no longer exhausted. And when you can do that and you feel that and connect with it, it's worth it, because that's the validation that you're on the path. It will grow. And it may be going against what your friends and family think is valuable, but know that when you connect with that energy and radiate from the inside out, you're invisibly sharing it with all the people around you too. So it is helpful, even if people don't understand it. But it does require some bravery and boldness. It does require going against the grain and doing it because you must.
Yes, that's so true. I know that everything you're saying is something that I need to hear right now, and I just have a feeling that a lot of people listening do as well. So, you mentioned crisis, and you have been quoted saying that the world is suffering from a spiritual crisis. So, why do you think that is? And what do you think the solution is to that?
Yes. So we are suffering from a spiritual crisis because we are out of balance collectively as a culture, overemphasizing the tangible. If you look at the media, it tells us to be beautiful, thin, rich, with cars, and famous, and then there's the intellectual, you get a higher degree and education and certification and win awards and be a superstar athlete and get the gold, and those are the things that are going to make you feel valuable and loved and fit in. So we strive for that because we want to fit in. We have this inherent fear of being ousted by the clan. So we want to fit in. Our survival depends on it. And here's the interesting thing I found out is I did go through a phase where I rejected high society and money and all these things because I was in that point where I felt the pain. But I've learned that everything is value, everything is a lesson. And what I know now, because I'm nearly 60 years old, so I'm entering that elder era, and able to gather all this wisdom and from a different perspective. It's all good. We actually need to master survival. As human beings, we are spiritual beings having a human experience on the earth plane. As humans, we're born to die. At the end of this lifetime, our body is going to decompose, but what remains? The bones. The bones are symbolic of our soul, and that's why it was so powerful for me. Another reason why it was so powerful for me to connect to animal bones, because they were symbolic of the spirit, the parts of me that I had denied or neglected and repressed, because I grew up in a society that overemphasized my human nature, the tangible essence, the accomplishing, visible proof of your worth. So that's good. All is good until we're out of balance. And the problem is we've just overemphasized the value of it. And at that point, when I rejected it and thought, oh, this is so shallow, I don't need a big house and money, I eventually realized, because now I know everything that happened to me is good. Nobody else is to blame for anything that happened to me. I learned something every time and grew from it. And what I learned is, yes, as humans, we have to master survival or we'll die. So we need to go to school and get a degree. We need to understand the rules of society to fit in so that we can contribute and get a job and, take care of ourselves and buy food, shelter, and clothing. That is actually good. I didn't know it at the time. It's part of life stages, and I didn't have elders who were explaining this to me as I went. I was just stumbling in the dark, figuring it out on my own. The problem was, as I got older, I kept doing more and more and more and more of that, and I was hungry, longing, lonely for something. I didn't know what, so I kept grasping, consuming, accomplishing more and more. A bigger house. I need more cars. I need more money. And it was never satisfying, to the point where I was exhausted. And I realized what I was longing for all alone, what I was lonely for, hungry for, was my inner self, my authentic self. So it's just a matter of balance, and then connecting with your inner self, then blending them and bringing them together. So I like to think of the elder years as that time in life when we can do it. We've worked really hard at understanding the rules of society and how to fit in and take care of ourselves and mastered survival. And then we've raised a family or had creative projects, nurtured and loved things, whether it's animals or relatives or our own children that we grew in our body. We go through that phase in life, and then we take all this wisdom that we've learned, and we have what I call a higher purpose. This is when you tap into your authentic self. In your authentic self is a gift, a unique gift you're meant to share with the world. And you can do that all along the way. The journey is step by step, simultaneously, if you can. But after the kids are gone out of the house, or you've completed your projects in business and you've mastered survival, then as an elder, you become that glowing light where you're sharing your wisdom and your gift with youth, who need this guidance and support. They need a cheerleader. They need someone to explain that these are life stages we go through. What is happening when we have a crisis? What is happening in our 20s when we're learning the rules of society and it feels constraining? And then, oh, here's another phase. Now you're a parent. You're learning about this. And oh, here's another phase. I just need someone to explain that to me, because then it would have been much easier. I would have known I was normal and I could have learned the lessons and put them into context. So as an elder, you can come into balance with your inner and outer self, have value. So the body starts aging. We're wrinkled. We're not physical specimens like the media tells us we should be, but we have that inner essence, the inner beauty, the radiance, the authenticity from a life well lived. And that is what's going to help the world heal, the wisdom of the elders. Because we're a society that pushes the elders to the side. We are told that we're of no value when we're older because we look old and wrinkled and we're not fun and youthful. Yes, we are. And so it's all good. It's just a matter of getting in touch with our inner authentic self. And that's the spiritual crisis. There's little talk of that. And we have overemphasized the human nature at the risk of the spiritual self.
Absolutely. You said so many profound things. I'm trying to think which one I even want to touch on. But yes, it's so much about balance. It's so much about a journey. And I know in your book, you really talked about how you always dreamed of being an elder, and you just touched on it now, but in today's culture, especially the Western society, we are taught to reject old age. We fear getting older. We fear death. But I loved the perspective that you shared. Would you maybe shine a little bit more light on how, we can just come to peace with getting older and, not fearing it, but embracing it, as we can then teach others what we've learned?
Yes. There usually comes a point when you're out of balance, and then you're kind of motivated to be bold and make a change. So just to pay attention to that, be present with yourself. I can tell you that when I was completely exhausted and drained on the hamster wheel, it was just never ending. And I know a lot of women can relate to that. Now, at age 58, I am enlivened. I am doing what I love, and I love what I'm doing, as the quote goes, and I cannot wait to get up in the morning. I had to be bold and debut as a woman who collects dead animals and makes art out of them. And when my children went to college, I decided to write my memoir to tell my story, because so many of my voices had been suppressed and not valued by the people around me, that I thought, okay, the only way I'm going to be able to do this, for me to debut who I am, is to write the story and say who I am, and then rely on that book as my calling card to magnetize the people who are ready to receive my wisdom. And I never in a million years thought it would be people in my own culture and society, because I hadn't felt misunderstood the entire time I was here. And yet things have shifted, because I did it and I believed it. And it's really all a matter of timing and like you said, enjoying the journey. Follow the clues. So if you're in the midst of raising children or a big career, and you're loving it, enjoying it, great. And when you get to that point where you're exhausted, or you think there must be something more, or you have a crisis, then follow the clues. Connect with something you love. Do it because you love it and know it's going to be enlivening. And then know that when you master survival and you come to this point in your 50s where your former career maybe doesn't mean anything to you anymore because you've mastered survival and you've been there, done that, or your children have gone and they left, just think, yahoo, this is my time. I get to do what I want. I have earned the right. Now I am going to express who I am from the inside out and be an elder with higher purpose and share my wisdom. And I am going to be bold and not afraid or ashamed of who I am and what I love to do. And sometimes it's not about money. Sometimes it has to be about money. But the sooner you start contemplating this and thinking of elders as people who can help you and guide you, and becoming elders who are role models for younger people, the more this is all going to make sense and we're all going to support each other. Do you know that in the indigenous cultures, quite often, what would happen when a child was born is their individual authentic nature would be seen and cultivated because they knew diversity was good. So, this person probably has the gift of the medicine man. Let's put him over there to do an apprenticeship there, and so on. So the elders were looking at the youth and cultivating their authenticity because they knew that would contribute to the diversity and health of the clan. So we don't do that in our culture. We're put into a mold and given a cookie cutter formula for success. And that's fine. Like I said, master survival so you can take care of yourself, then you can do what you want. But sometimes you have to do what you want first. And sometimes you have to let go of the expectation of how much money you need and where you need to live and how big your house needs to be to go inward and do what you really love to do. So I tell people who haven't connected with their passion or their authentic self to slow down and receive. You can spend time in nature 3 days a week with all your senses open. You're going to start receiving information that's authentic to who you are. Do art. Just create something new. Daydream. Remember who you were as a child. What did you love to do as a child that you don't do anymore? What have you always wanted to do that somebody told you you couldn't? Those are the things that you want to connect with. And then just do it and enjoy the process and the journey without having to make a big goal. Oh, I'm going to do this and be famous and make money. Just do it because you're compelled and it feels good and you know it will enliven you and continue to grow.
That is absolutely beautiful. And I just wonder how different we all would be if at birth we had an elder who said, okay, this is your authentic self, go and flourish, instead of living in a society where from the time that we start preschool, if not before, we are being molded into what society thinks we should do, who society thinks we should be. Thank you so much for all that insight. And I know this is completely off track, but I think the listeners would like to hear about this, and I am curious. Did you really track wolves and go eye to eye with a lion in Africa? Is this a true story?
I did track wolves in Wisconsin, and it was an incredible experience. And then eye to eye with a lion. I did come eye to eye with a lion. I was sitting in a Jeep, but it was very close to me. And it was the most profound, powerful experience to have this giant, magnificent, powerful predator look me eye to eye, literally like 6 feet from me. It welled up so much feeling in my body. It was almost like I became one with it and I could feel its raw power, which was scary and also awesome at the same time.
Wow. That is crazy. That might have really scared me. I don't know if I could do that. That is amazing. That really is. Well, thank you so much for coming on the 9 to 5 Dropout Show. I know that I personally benefited from everything that you had to say. I know that listeners will as well. And I hope that, if everybody listening could just take a nugget, just one little piece of what you heard, then you're really going to be one step closer into stepping into your authentic self. And, the more of us who can really show the world our authentic selves, that's how we create change. That's how we just become more comfortable and we inspire other people to step into who they authentically are and present that to the world. So thank you so much, Lucinda. Can you please share with the listeners where they can find you and your book?
Thank you, Rachel. This was so much fun.
It was.
Yes, my book is available on Amazon. It's called Confessions of a Bone Woman. Realizing Authentic Wildness in a Civilized World. And my website is my name, which is Lucinda Bakken White, LucindaBakkenWhite.
Awesome. Well, I will link to everything in the notes so you can look for that. There's also the link to the 10 steps to starting your business and the free mini course, as well as the 9 to 5 Dropout Academy. So thank you so much for everybody tuning in, and I will talk with you next week.
Thank you for tuning in to the 9 to 5 Dropout Show. Be sure to check out the links below to enroll in the 9 to 5 Dropout Academy and receive your free gift and mini course. Let us know what you thought of this week's episode by rating or leaving a review.